Mid-90s. I've improved my gaming abilities enough to be invited to the single best group that I've ever played with. We have at least one published author, people who have been on the Comic-Con board of directors, members of a popular local medieval flick pop group, and a future award-winning writer of supplements of a popular tabletop RPG. It's a blast. These absolute geek legends actually enjoy my playstyle, and regularly invite me to their games. And the campaigns are fun, interesting, intelligent, well-paced, and often hilarious. In addition, the banter at the table often includes some of the most brilliantly awful puns that I've ever heard, and I like to think that I gave as good as I got in that respect. This is not a tale of that group. Through a friend of a friend, I'm introduced to Sarah, a sweet, intelligent, and somewhat shy woman who says she's a part of a gaming group that's been playing a D&D campaign on and off for several years. It's very much old-school 1st edition AD&D, which I hadn't played in a while. She says she'll see if she can get me an invite. Okay, cool. She introduced me to her husband, Cedric, who's back from the Navy deployment, and after I meet with his approval, he says that I should drop by that Friday to the DM's apartment to meet him, cobble together a character, and start playing. Excellent. Game night arrives. I meet Matt, the DM. Did I say old school earlier? We're talking old school. He's got the neckbeard, sure, but he also has the air of someone who's been playing tabletop games of some sort or another since Gygax first took the notes that became chainmail. Has a jar of dice the size of my head, and if his card doesn't have a bumper sticker reading, my other card is a dragon, then I'm willing to eat those dice. His bookshelf is filled with giant binders detailing the campaign world, into the creation of which he's obviously put years worth of love, care, and effort into. He sizes me up, asks me about my experiments, and said he's glad to have me aboard. We throw together a character for me, my usual cleric, this time a devotee of the goddess of wine and merriment, which according to his house rules, gives me bonuses for being drunk in combat, and I get a quick and dirty primer in the basics of his world. He does seem to be a bit of a rule stickler, but there are worse things out there, and I have a real fondness for the guys who have been rolling dice since geek was actually an insult. Now we're just waiting on the other players to arrive. Matt coughs with an air of forceful casualness and says, "Oh, by the way, Simon's back in town and I said he could play." Cedric scowls. Sarah's eyes narrow, and she seems to shrink into herself. First red flag. I raise my eyebrows quizzically, but Cedric is pulling Matt off to the side, and Sarah's either intently studying her character sheet or pretending to do so. The side conversation ends with an audible, "He promised he'd behave," and I decided it's none of my business. Simon arrives along with two other players whose name I can't even bother to come up with replacements for, as they don't play a major role in what happens. Simon's a bit scruffy and unshaven. He has a slightly off look in his eyes, and his body pretty much defines gangly. But since that description could apply to me just as easily, I'm in no position to judge. In addition to my human cleric, we have Cedric's human cavalier, Sarah's halfling thief, and Simon's half-elven bard. I can't recall what the other players were, but I'm pretty sure one of them must have been a magical class of some sort or another. It's a high-level campaign, with the average being around 17th and 18th. The game had last left off in the encampment of Cedric's patron, a noble who was journeying on a quest to find his lost son, who had been kidnapped by the dastardly primary antagonist. I'm along as his spiritual advisor and healer. Simon's along to provide entertainment. We mostly role-play introductions, and then everyone beds down for the night. We head north the next day, and that's where I begin to see the problem. As we head into the mountains, the bard pulls up alongside the halfling and tries to seduce her, much to the annoyance of Cedric and the embarrassment of Sarah. Now this is where anybody running a game in any other group is going to pull him aside and say, "Hey look, she's obviously not into playing this out, so give it a rest." But this ain't my game to run, so I keep my mouth shut. This continues for quite some time, and Matt seems oblivious. I'm beginning to think maybe this isn't the game for me. A break is called, so I go outside for a smoke. Sarah, who doesn't smoke, immediately says she'll join me. "Sorry about that," she murmurs. We used to date, and he says he's over it, but he keeps doing this in the game. It's why I don't play when Cedric's not here, and he is. He moved a couple months ago, though, so I didn't think this would be a problem. Shit. Is every AD&D game in San Diego that involves one or more women cursed with some schmuck who can't keep his sword in his scabbard? I rolled my eyes in sympathy and listened to the rest of her story. Simon's the person who got her playing in the first place, and brought her into the game where she met Cedric. We go back. There's a plotline involving the primary antagonist having placed a spy in the camp. It's actually pretty gripping, and the players who have had the same character for a while are playing them well, focusing as much on the role-playing aspect as they are on the dice rolls. We end the day with Cedric's Cavalier setting up the guards on the perimeter of the camp, as the rest of us retire to our tents. Or rather, most of us do. Simon's passing notes to the DM, who looks at them expressionlessly, scribbles his response, and returns them. Cedric takes a bathroom break. Simon sees this as his chance and passes one final note, which Matt reads. He has Simon do a stealth check, and he succeeds. Simon. I tried to rape Sarah's character name. My jaw actually drops. Did I hear this right? Sarah gives something between a gasp and a whimper. I'm sure that the DM is going to put a stop to it. Instead, he gets a thoughtful look in his face, strokes his beard and murmurs, well, that would obviously start with a grapple attack, unless you're trying to knock her out first. I glance at Sarah. She's trembling slightly, her mouth agape. I know this look. I know this look. I've seen this look on the faces of people I've been involved with in the past, and I've seen it on the face of my female friends. I've seen it on the face of immediate family members, and it broke my heart. She's not just shocked. She's reliving something. I look over at Simon and see a half smirk on his face. My blood turns to ice. He knows. He fucking knows. He dated her. She told him. And he knows. Before I can say anything or even think of what to say, Cedric comes back. He looks around, sees Sarah's expression, and immediately kneels by her side. What's wrong, baby? She's unable to respond, obviously on the verge of a full-blown panic attack. He looks over at Matt for clarification, but he's excitedly, if wordlessly, flipping through the rules, trying to figure out the rules for a sexual assault would be. Cedric looks at me instead. Simon's character is trying to rape Sarah's character. I say, wondering if she's told him yet. She has. Cedric's face turns red. He stands up, walks around the table to Simon, who's holding up his hands and protesting, "Dude, it's a game!" to no avail. Since Matt started asking a mute Sarah what her character would be wearing to bed, Cedric, who works out, grabs Simon out of his chair, lifts him bodily to his feet, and slams him against the living room wall. Shouts of "Hey, hey, hey!" from Matt, "Oh shit!" from the other players, and "Motherfucker!" from Cedric collide in the air over the table. Sarah begins to cry. Matt gets up and breaks up the fight. "Get out!" he yells at Cedric. "I will not have violence at the table!" I still can't believe what I'm hearing. Cedric glares at Matt with nearly the same level of disgust as he was with Simon. He says "fine" and punches Simon once more, hard in the solar plexus. Simon drops to the floor, gasping. Cedric gently guides Sarah from her chair, and we all begin gathering our things. Matt looks at me in surprise. "I can give you a ride home if you want to stay," he says. "No, this isn't my kind of game. You never let that happen in a game unless everyone says it's okay. And even then, it wouldn't be something I'd want to play." "Alright," he shrugs. "But if a character can do something in a game according to the rules, then I let them do it. Anything else seems unfair." I wish that I'd thought of something witty to say at that point, or clever, or cutting. But instead I just shook my head and remembered that sometimes you can be a little too old school for your own good. Later I got a word that the campaign had ended that night. Or at least Cedric and Sarah's part in it. I have no idea if the rest of them are still out playing somewhere, but if so, I hope they've learned a good lesson. I doubt it, but I can hope.